Anyone can be taught how to fill in a form or type a lease, but personality skills, I'm looking for someone who has good energy, someone who's passionate. Whether they're passionate about leasing from the start doesn't always matter if they're passionate about people. If we start training our people all the way up the ladder instead of trying to bring outsiders in, and we look at it more as I want my team to be able to replace me, honestly, the narrative's the most important part. Anything you're selling, how you sell it, matters more than the product you sell. You can take a property that's C-class in a bad neighborhood with a great team and a great set of processes, and the resident can have a fantastic experience. We're going to make a point of telling them, this is curated for you. We're going to have a lavish event once a quarter that's curated to the needs of the people who live here. That's you. And I'll tell people really specifically.
And we are back live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Multifamily Hangout. I think for the first time we're broadcasting for 3 different locations. Maybe it's not the first time. I'm in Kansas City. My co-host Chris Moreno in Atlanta, and we have our guest broadcasting from Arizona. I'm your host, Adrian Danila. Want to thank our sponsors from Kairos and Coastal Painting Contractors for making this broadcast possible. With this being said, Chris Moreno, take it away, sir.
Awesome. Thank you, Adrian. And we're very excited to have Cat Martinez on today as our special guest. And yeah, as you said, we're broadcasting all over the country. So if you're one of our audience members, go ahead and mention what city you're in. Go ahead and mention a question that you want to ask for Cat, because I have many. We want to make sure we'll ask yours as too. Cat has many different experiences in real estate, and I want to get into some of those. But she's had some experience with being the director of quality control. She's worked in title insurance and custom home building and court systems in real estate. You know, she's got experience across the board, from AP and AR to HR to training systems. But she's really been in the industry for quite a while. I want to actually hear kind of how she got into it. Really cool, to hear your experiences. Also in the geography of Arizona, because I'm really, really excited about hearing your thoughts on different markets, but especially the Scottsdale, Arizona market. And I think today, Kat, you're currently with Greystar. Is that correct?
Yes, I am. I am a lease-up community manager here in Chandler, Arizona with Greystar. I've been with Greystar since the beginning of the year. I initially signed on with Wood Partners, who then did a strategic merger with Greystar. So kind of best of both worlds. I get to be a part of that Wood Partners development side, but I still get to be on the Greystar team.
That's so cool. And I'd love to hear, how did you fall into real estate? How did you get into the business? What was there a story there?
There is many moons ago. We will not mention exactly how many years. I needed an apartment. I needed somewhere to stay. I was going through a divorce. I was looking around at places I absolutely could not afford. And I struck up a conversation with a community manager who also now works for Greystar by way of a JPI takeover. And she basically said, hey, you get a discount if you work as the leasing person. Maybe you should apply. I had no resume to speak of at the time. I was pretty young. So I basically called the HR department until they gave me an interview and got the job right away. I started at a beautiful lease up in Dallas, Texas, and I did that for a few years. I then left multifamily completely and went into corporate America. And that's where all those other experiences with courthouse research, title insurance, home building, all of those kind of culminated over about 15 years. Then we moved to Phoenix, Arizona, and I needed a job again. So I went back to what I knew how to do, which was come back to multifamily, and I've been in for 12 more years. It always draws you back.
Your story, just like so many others, probably like 99% of everybody I told to in multifamily is like, this was a happenstance. How do we make people wanted to be a part of this industry? Like, just how do we build that type of desire for them to actually chase multifamily, not like end up working in multifamily by accident, by just like a random situation? How do we make this a intentional career?
Great question, Adrian. I actually think that we should be focusing on kind of an intern program. There are a handful of companies that are doing that. If we were going into, say, high school career days or even college career days and literally offering them kind of a jump in, an internship or a step up right from jump. A lot of our best and brightest leasing people are very young, and then they find that this is something they're great at, so they stick with it and build a career out of it. If we could go into that kind of setting and maybe host some classes, I really feel like it'd be a great opportunity for us, jump in some high schools and say, hey, you're not sure you want to go to college, but if you don't go to college, what are you going to do with your life? There's a great opportunity here to capture some really bright young people and educate them on how great of a career this really can be. I speak for myself and probably a dozen other people who I've talked to lately who say, I don't know what else I would do outside of this because multifamily pays really well for the work we do. And we all seem to love it. Even on days when we don't, we all seem to still love it. So if we could jump in at an earlier time, like I said, high schools or colleges at those career days, and offer this up as a career path instead of just kind of letting people fall in when they go to look for that first place to live, which is, that happened to me, and I feel like I just got lucky. Maybe I didn't strike up a conversation that day and I would have been stuck at McDonald's working, trying to find something to do with my life while I was going through a divorce. Instead, I landed in a great career path.
That's solid, and obviously landing with some great companies in your history. I'm kind of curious, as you think about today's movement towards an incredible experience. I think there's a lot of shifts from and things that we see from hospitality coming into real estate and multifamily, even from you're seeing offices being in the lobbies where you can co-work. How do you think about that guest experience and kind of differentiating the properties, especially in the Scottsdale market, which has so many amenities? How do you think about that customer experience, and what are you seeing and what are you hearing on the ground from residents?
So I think we have to think of it from an all-inclusive standpoint. I work in the Chandler market right now, but we do have a really high-end property here with amenities that rival anything you find in Scottsdale. So we have micro offices in our space. We have 8 of them. We offer them up as kind of an extension of your living room and an office space within your community where your commute is walk downstairs. But we also offer little perks on top of that. We have a really fancy latte making coffee machine in our lobby that's free to our residents. It's nice to know you can run downstairs, grab a latte, hit your micro office, take your meeting all in one space without ever having to really leave home. I think the way that we continue to drive that is really keeping our pulse, like things like this, meetings like this, listening to what each market has to say and input of where those spaces can really grow. Some of the ideas that I've heard that I almost wish I could have implemented here. I didn't get involved quite quick enough to implement some of those ideas, but the little podcast spaces, wellness spaces are something I'm really passionate about. So if we can kind of try to start incorporating those types of spaces where homes should be somewhere they never have to leave, right? So when we're touring, we actually explain the whole property as kind of resort style living, but elevated, because at a resort, sure, you're at a hotel and you check out at the end of your stay and you got a nice pool and maybe some fancy luxurious things, but they're not your everyday space. So we really want to sell this as their everyday extension. When someone goes looking for a home, for example, you'll have a couple. Maybe they're going to shop for houses and he wants a man cave. He wants to watch the big game. He wants a space that he can do that with a giant TV. And maybe she needs space to invite her friends or vice versa. We want to explain to them, this is the space we've offered for that. We've got a giant media wall. You're welcome to come down here and watch the big game or watch the season finale of The Bachelor, whatever you're into. We've got a full demo kitchen, and we let them know when you're hosting that event, go ahead and use our kitchen. Cook your food down here, warm up your plates, do the things that you would do if you were hosting in your home and you just don't have space to do that. Because I think that's the number one objection to apartments is, wow, I have no space. But when we add all these amenities that add an extra space to their home, we're giving them exactly what they need, and they're only paying for the space they technically live in. So it's a really great compromise, and it's a really great way to drive people in.
I love that. Adrian can probably share about some of the places he stayed and maybe on his travels, but some of these guest rooms, they now it's so cool when a property doesn't rent every room and they allow the residents to almost invite their families or their friends to come in and enjoy that community. And I feel like that's a brilliant move, to your point, Kat, of like, I'm seeing golf machines. I saw a bowling alley in a building recently, amazing pools, like with just gorgeous equipment, not just the standard equipment, but the top of the line stuff you get like a Ritz-Carlton, you're getting in your own apartment building now because you're not having to buy it, you're sharing it. But I think these gyms, the amenities, I'm in a room right now, which is almost like it could probably be a podcast room, and it's got, drinks here, it's got a machine in the back, it's got all these, for cleaning, it's got all these different things. And I'm thinking about like, because I wouldn't be able to afford all these things on my own, Cat, if I moved into an apartment building. But because I'm now choosing to come to your property, I can pay rent and then get all these other things that are shared with 200, 400 other people, and I get access to them. Even if I don't even use them, I'm like, hey, I got a pool that I use twice a year. I have a gym that I step foot in once a month, but I love that I have it. Is that kind of what you see? Is like, or they're sometimes that there's certain things that get people so emotionally excited that they're like, I'm signing because of that. Does that ever happen?
It happens frequently. My first tour when we opened the property was a gentleman who runs a business. It's a cookie baking business, and his cookies are fantastic. But he's been hunting for a space where he can film a new commercial for his website, and he's had not very much luck. A lot of the kitchens in the area don't like to rent out their space. And when he saw our clubhouse, it's like a light bulb went off. He's like, oh my gosh, I can film my commercial. Am I allowed to film my commercial here? I'm like, hey, you live here now. This is your home. I will gladly let you use our demo kitchen to film your commercial. And it's beautiful. And he'll have a beautiful website as a result of it. And then it serves double purpose, advertising for me, advertising for him. And he got to do it right from home. So he can literally bring his stuff downstairs, film his commercial, go back upstairs, get back to baking delicious cookies.
Kat, what can you tell us about the current state of the Phoenix market? Is it from a supply and demand standpoint, I will say? And then I'd like for you to go into new developments. What is the state of new developments? Is it a lot that's being developed right now? What's the situation?
Sure. So supply wise, I still feel like Phoenix is probably in desperate need. Phoenix has a large influx of people on a pretty regular basis. At one point, we were getting 3,000 new residents a month into the greater Phoenix area. So there's definitely a high demand there. Pricing for regular homes is very high. So an apartment that offers all of these great amenities is a great counterbalance to the high end of how our pricing for our homes is. For example, you can go and buy a home that was built in the 80s and it's 1,200 square feet and it's $860,000. I know this because I'm looking for a home right now. A lot of people don't want to pay $860,000 for a home built in the 80s that's 1,200 square feet, but they can rent an apartment that has every feature they could ever dream of and still come in at a price point that makes sense. So there are quite a few new developments coming up in the area. I think Scottsdale, once the new developments that are currently in place really break ground, what will happen is they won't allow as many as they have been allowing. The newly elected mayor is kind of anti new growth in Scottsdale because she wants to keep it exclusive. But I think that's a great opportunity for the areas that surround Scottsdale to step their game up. And some of these newer developments, particularly in Chandler, there's some beautiful developments here that are every bit as high end as the one I'm sitting in. And it allows for the market to expand a little outside of Scottsdale and still get the luxurious feel they're going for. I don't think we're going to outpace it anytime soon, though. I think we're going to still need to keep plugging away and creating new space because we just keep getting an influx of new people.
So I'm curious, how are the rents out there in that area? And what is the average occupancy in a market?
I'm going to go ahead and ballpark that. So I'm going to say it's in the low 90s kind of across the board, maybe higher in certain areas, like in pockets. My Chandler market is sitting right in the mid to high 90s or mid to low 90s. It really fluctuates market to market in Phoenix. There's a lot of really specific pockets, like Tempe, of course, has a higher student density. So their occupancy, grows and wanes with the seasonality of school. But as an overall generality, rents here are healthy. They're robust. They're not quite as rapidly growing as they were maybe 2 years ago, but they're still quite healthy. At my community, my average rents for one bedrooms are in the 1,600 ranges. My two bedrooms are in the mid 2000s. So kind of across the board in my market, that's kind of where we're all sitting. Not inexpensive, but definitely a great value for what we're offering. Our price per square foot is really great, and we're keeping really closely with those comps.
Kind of curious, wanted to know around operational efficiencies. And you're thinking about operations being so important in processes of running an efficient property, right? It's a team effort. It's not just one person. And I think a lot of people are trying to centralize, but it requires humans and people have high expectations. What are you seeing in terms of like, whether it's locally or even at a national level, in terms of like maintenance and speed to getting things taken care of for the residents? Are you seeing it happening faster than ever? Is there a slowdown? And is there a discrepancy that there's a big opportunity you're seeing for the buildings who do respond incredibly fast, right? Because I feel like more people are expecting a response to my cell phone or my text instantly. Is that right?
Yeah, so I think with the advent of all this technology, what's nice is that it does fuel the need, right? So people have become instant gratification people. They're consumers that they grab that cell phone, they expect the answer as fast as they send it, right? So the AI pieces and things like me to lease or something like that, those really fuel that need. They help fill the void of instantaneous conversation, but it really boils down to the people on the ground, right? So we try to staff our properties really carefully. I'm fortunate to work for a company like Greystar that has a lot of bench depth. We definitely staff our properties in a way where we're still able to provide that personal touch, but we utilize all of those technology tools. I personally, we utilize Me to Lease right here on my site because sometimes we are out on a tour that's 20 to 30 minutes long. The person on the other end of that line wants their answer right away. They want to know someone saw them. From a maintenance standpoint, I feel like that's going to be one of those areas that's going to be increasingly difficult to create efficiency outside of humans, right? Because work orders still require a person to physically do the work. It's really going to be about finding other ways where we can maybe centralize some of the admin work that maybe takes extra time from human people and slide that piece of the budget over to fill a bigger maintenance need. In buildings like mine that are brand new, the maintenance needs a little lower, but there's a large amount of properties in the Phoenix market particularly that are aging, and they're going to require a lot more hands-on. So I think finding ways to strip back in the admin side without cutting customer service so that we have the budgets to push toward that maintenance side so that we're still able to provide really quick service. One thing I will say is 100% accurate. The properties that maintain a really quick response time in every way, maintenance, admin, leasing, those properties get great reviews and they get great feedback and they get more referrals. So the properties that lag and don't really respond quickly enough will tend to start seeing it really hit their occupancy rapidly because word spreads, right? Somebody will pop in and pop a Yelp review. Oh, this place never answers my call. I wouldn't want to go to a place that never answers my call. So we try to kind of utilize the best pieces of that technology while still giving really, really close personal service. And yeah, it's just about finding ways to slice it to the needs of the property so that every area stays responsive.
So what I'm hearing you saying is that we gotta stay with the basics, property management 101, and
Yes, pretty much. My team at my property, of course, is brand new, but we still kind of abide by some old school rules. We've got all this great technology, and Greystar has been an awesome company to work with because they do offer so many options. We were able to tailor that to our needs, but my team still writes handwritten thank you notes and handwritten move-in cards. And we still make personal phone calls. We don't rely just on those email and text bots and things like that because people like a personal touch. My maintenance staff personally walks each apartment, dates their air filters, shakes their hand, makes sure they understand how their oven works and things like that, because that personal touch is going to go a long way. And we're never going to be able to replace it with technology.
being on a lease up, right? You have to have a team of salespeople to sell like there's no tomorrow. So the question I have for you is, how do you select those people? What are the traits that you're looking at when you're hiring leasing agents? I'm asking this because I had a conversation with a young man like a couple of months ago. He asked for my advice. He wants to enter multifamily, real estate, he's very attracted by it, but he does something that's like completely different, has nothing to do with real estate. So he asked me how would I get in it. So there'll be a great question for him and others like him that might be tempted, might consider property management. So what are the main things that you're looking at when you're hiring leasing agents?
Sure. I'm actually looking for soft skills first. Admin skills can be taught. Anyone can be taught how to fill in a form or type a lease, but sales skills, personality skills, I'm looking for someone who has good energy, someone who's passionate. Whether they're passionate about leasing from the start doesn't always matter if they're passionate about people. I'm looking for someone who is interested in growing and interested in learning. When you find people that are like that, they're curious, they want to learn more, they want to know more. Those are people who are going to thrive in a lease up environment or in any leasing environment because they want to grow. You can teach them how to run the CRM, how to manage a queue. Those are easy tasks. I can teach my 15-year-old son how to do those, but I can't teach him how to be great with people. I can't teach him how to build a rapport. And those are things that you can pick up within moments of an interview. If that person's going to be bright and energetic, you know this within 30 seconds of talking to them. That's what I'm looking for first. The skills are great. I love someone with a customer service background. I'm particularly fond of people who have had to work in fast food or coffee shops because they tend to deal with a high volume of people. If they come in with still a great attitude, that means that they've got trainability, but they've still got the right attitude from jump. So definitely looking for those soft skills first. If your friend wants to crack his foot in the door, let me know what market he's in. Maybe I can hook him up with someone.
I love what you're talking about around the traits and also virtues, which we're trying to teach our son and the school he's at. They teach them about the virtues and being a virtuous student of the world. And I'm curious, everyone, I always believe, taught us the things we know, and we learn them from others and through trials. Who are some of the people, in your life that maybe have mentored you, and maybe you've taken some great tips in your career? Is there anyone you want to give a shout out or a thank you to?
I have 100 of them, but I'll try to keep it brief. So I've been really fortunate to work under quite a few people that I viewed as mentors. When I first joined the business, I worked for a lovely woman named Karen Markham. She's the person who talked me into coming into leasing. She's in Graystar. I believe she's still in Texas, maybe California though. She's moved around a bit. It's been a multitude of years, we'll say it that way. But I've also been fortunate to come into a couple of really great companies. I've had the good fortune of working for Avenue 5 and RPM Living and now Graystar. These are companies that hire great people. And when you're working under great people who are lifelong learners and lifelong teachers, it's really easy to learn from them. I can honestly say, even if I had to say my worst boss ever, I learned so much from that person. I learned things I didn't want to be as a supervisor. I learned things that I wish that were being taught to me from that supervisor. And I learned some really great lessons from that person as well. So things that I caught myself using later on, I'm like, oh, wow, I guess I did learn a lot from this person. I've had a really great mentor named Christy Oldham. She's fantastic. And some, just really strong leaders. I feel like I've been really fortunate. We have now the mantle of being those leaders. So I try to position myself as the kind of leader that's going to inspire the people under me. I tell my team on day one, my job is to teach you to take my job because I'm going to go take my boss's job. If we start training our people all the way up the ladder instead of trying to bring outsiders in, and we look at it more as I want my team to be able to replace me, and then I want my leasing to replace my assistant, and I want to be able to teach them that process. Hey, bring in someone who wants to grow and wants to learn and has good energy, and we'll keep that process going all the way up the ladder. That's where our mantle falls now, is to be that kind of leader, because we've had that kind of leader. I've been really blessed to have that type of leadership in my life.
And now a word from Dean Fungawing, founder and CEO, Kairos.
Think about it. That can't be a false alarm. You never want water behind that wall, right? Because historically they were going there to tear that wall out because it's dark, it's damp, it's cold, right? And you got hot, moist water with steam coming behind the wall. It's just like the perfect recipe for organic growth. And so they just got very serious about solving that problem. And for them, they could, instead of just having this massive capital budget request for like changing every water heater, every recirc pump, going through this massive disruption, they could tackle them one at a time. Boom, 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 right? It'd be safe to say that they got an ROI like very, very quick. And because our solution cost nowhere near $200,000. So they were happy.
We often talk about success, not only here on a podcast, but generally in life, right? People love success stories. I want to go the other way around and ask you about a failure of yours, a failure that you learn from and you actually turn it into a success, like a learning lesson, and actually start as a failure, but you flip the narrative, you flip the script, and you turn it into a success for yourself.
Oh, for sure. Well, I've had plenty of those. I've often heard that you should always fail forward. So I've kind of taken that as kind of a little mantra that I stick by. You're not always going to do things perfectly, but I've had one, I'll call it a hiccup in my career where I took on a job that I know that I was ready for, but I don't know that I knew what I was getting myself into. I was perfectly capable of doing the work, but I had no idea what was going on in the background because I failed to do my research. So that's a huge failure for me. Upon failing to do that research, I realized I got myself into a job that was not going to make me happy. It paid incredibly well, but money doesn't equal success. Happiness, contentment, opportunity, those things to me equal success. So I took on a job that I thought sounded pretty easy, failed to do my research, and found that really what they were looking for was 100% not what they were asking for. I would consider that probably my worst career failure, because it was my own fault. I stopped the research level at, these people seem great. Those people seem great. This seems like a almost too good to be true job. And it was. So definitely I would recommend everyone, when you're taking on a new challenge, don't be afraid to take it on, because that's the only way you grow is by stretching and by pushing yourself. But B, do all the research. I took this current position mostly because I wanted to be a part of a different culture. And then I immediately found out, literally within 3 days, that I was about to be part of the biggest management company in the country. And that wasn't what I initially signed on for. But what it turns out to be is that the culture was already there. And even though I'm in part of a giant company, the culture I was looking for is there because my leadership level has that. My local leadership is very connected. And I did the research. I stayed with it because I did my research. I said, okay, well, now that I found out I'm going to be part of Greystar, which is humongous, what does that really look like for me? And the more I dug and the more I researched, the more I found that it was the perfect fit. So really exciting when you do the research and get it right. But definitely, when you get it wrong, you just have to keep failing forward every single time.
Yeah, we had Richard Friedman, who worked on the Wood and Greystar deal on the podcast a couple months ago, and it's great to hear. Your stories are reminding me of some of the other folks we've had on from the same company, and people who've been there and through the acquisitions. And I think of someone who's a mentor to me, Mike out in Arizona, who is also the chair of NAA, has mentored many people in the industry. So great to hear that. As you think about this and you think about, taking a chance and taking a risk, and I think a lot of people are afraid, as Adrian mentioned earlier, the status quo. Some people say, oh, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And versus, I'm going to take a shot. I'm going to try something new. I'm going to go into a role that sounds interesting, or my mentor's telling me to try something new. I might learn a new skill, but there's always that take 2 steps back, 1 step forward, and then you can take 5 steps forward. How do you think about that with trying a new process, a new technology, even, if you're trying new technology or a new rollout, pushing yourself to do something new with your colleagues in the business of real estate? Do you have thoughts around that, or any frameworks you've seen or readings that you think about that help guide you?
Sure. I actually think if you're doing your research, right? That's going right back to where I was at a minute ago. You do your research. If it makes sense on paper, everything seems like this is going to be a great fit for my property. We'll sometimes implement a process that we think, oh, this is going to be fantastic. And the thing is, rip the Band-Aid off. Go ahead and try. Unless it's going to cost you something that doesn't work, it's going to cost you budgetary, something that's not maybe in your budget, maybe shy off on that. But if it's not going to cost you anything but some effort, jump in, rip the Band-Aid off, go ahead and try it. The worst thing that can happen is it's not going to be the right fit. Or vice versa. The best thing that happens, you find out, wow, we've implemented this new process and look how much more efficient we got. Or look how much more leasing velocity we gained from doing it this way. It's really just, I'd hesitate to call it courage, more of curiosity. If you stay curious about what you're doing and you always want to learn something new, it's a matter of jumping in head first and going ahead. I tend to jump in head first to almost everything I do, whether I feel like I'm 100% qualified or not. I jump in anyways because I know that I've got a good enough, strong enough background to make my way. And I'll eventually land on my feet, or I'll eventually be running instead of walking, right? So that's always going to be my advice. Jump right in as long as it makes sense. Now, obviously, if it makes no sense, if it's throw this new piece of technology that doesn't integrate with anything else you do, that's maybe something to hold off, maybe take some caution, or try this new product that nobody else is using and you really can't figure out if you're going to benefit from it. Maybe you do a little bit more research first. So maybe a small amount of caution, but for the most part, anything that makes sense, you dive right in.
A great sales coach that I interviewed a while back, Jack Daly, talks about the importance of having a sales playbook. How important is that everybody sells kind of the same thing the same way. So specifically, I want to ask you, Kat, how important is to create a narrative? How important is storytelling in the leasing process? How do we build a consistent story that actually sells over and over and over again? What kind of tips do you have?
Honestly, the narrative's the most important part. Anything you're selling, how you sell it matters more than the product you sell. You can take a property that's C class in a bad neighborhood with a great team and a great set of processes, and the resident can have a fantastic experience. Or you can take an A class property in the best part of town with a team that's not cohesive or not responsive and have a horrible resident experience. So the narrative you create really does make a huge difference. It starts with your team. I'm going to take my team aside. Before we launched and opened, the whole team met together and we said, okay, this is what we're selling. This is the experience that we're going for. Every person that walks through the door comes in with something a little different. So you may have to tailor some of the things you say, but the bones of it need to stay the same. The bones of what we're doing are this is the product we're selling. This is the experience we're offering to these people when they walk in the door. And this is how we're going to create an environment that they love to call home. And then you start tailoring that individually as people come in to what their needs are. One person may just need space. I just need more space. I'm not in a big enough place. Let me show you some of my more spacious floor plans, but they're still going to get the same narrative. We walk them through a really regimented tour path, mostly for fair housing reasons. You want to keep that narrative similar enough to stay compliant and fair, but tailored enough to give them something that feels personal. Learn their name, use their name 100 times over. Every time you're talking about a space that they're going to go into, it's their space. When you come home each day, when you come to cook dinner, when you're washing your clothes, everything has to get personalized and labeled as something that belongs to them. It's not my community, it's the prospect's community. It's not my game room, it's the prospect's game room. So let's call him Chris. Chris, when you come over here with your friends to play pool, did you know you can slip in this back door and go into my speakeasy and have a more intimate, quiet time with your friends and hang out? You personalize it each time. And it's such an easy thing to do that a lot of places will overlook. The narrative you're creating also is giving them a story about their own life that makes them feel good, right? Adrian, when you come into the property today, I'm going to show you how this is going to be. You're going to want to live here forever. You might not want to lease forever, but you're going to want to live here forever. And you're going to hope your next home is exactly like this one. Because when you move in your couch and you're hanging out right here and you've got your Sonos speaker and you're jamming out to your favorite songs while you're typing away that report, you just have to personalize each little piece of that narrative and keep it consistent. Sell the whole experience, not just the product. So we sell the whole experience here. We sell the resort style of things. We sell even up to our resident events. We're going to make a point of telling them this is curated for you. We're going to have a lavish event once a quarter that's curated to the needs of the people who live here. That's you. And I'll tell people really specifically when I send you an email after you've moved in, please read it. Don't ignore it. I make it a presumptive conversation. Once you've moved in, when I send your emails, please read them. You're going to want to RSVP to the events I throw, because I want them to, in the back of their head, go, yeah, I should RSVP to that event. It tells their brain, hey, this is my home. Wait, I do live here. And it's just creating that story for them. And we're not selling them anything that we don't want them to have. No matter if you're an A-class property, a C-class property, you want people to have a home. So the home that you're selling, you create the narrative around that home and you sell them on the experience. The one thing that I can always offer up to my prospects is that I've got a team that cares about their home every time. We make a very big point of it. My maintenance guy touches every single appliance. I personally touch every home that you walk into. When we have questions, hey, how does this work? You know what? I've worked this myself. Let me show you. I'll take you aside. Your stove is going to do this, or your refrigerator filter pops out right here. Everything we tell them, we personalize it straight back to them. And it's just creating that storyline around their home.
That's so cool. I mean, you think about how there's been a shift from ROI this, ROI that, ROI this. People used to not care about reviews online. Now it's probably one of the top, I would imagine, is that one of the top things you look at that doesn't necessarily cost something, but it asks something and then it can pay off. But how do you monetize that, right?
Yeah, and there's a lot of strict regulation that comes in there. Recently, there's been some new regulations that kind of keep you from getting those. I know back in the day, you'd call every friend you had, hey, I need a review. Hey, can you pop a review? Because you were trying to hit some magic marker. And now they really want it to be a lot more organic because it's more authentic. You can't incentivize the review with anything tangible. You can't offer up a raffle. You can't give them a prize, but you can incentivize it with the kind of service that they have and the way they feel when they walk out of the space. You can incentivize it with the way that it feels good to be around your team, and then it makes them want to make you happy. So we'll tell people, hey, even if you're not going to live here, if you love the property as much as we do, would you mind shooting us a quick review? And we ask every single person, whether they love it or hate it. I've even asked people that were unhappy, hey, you know what? If I can resolve this for you and make it right, would you mind giving us a review that says that? Just, it's honest. It's not asking for something unfair. And most of the time, if you are responsive and you resolve something quickly, they'll give you a review, and a great one, because they're not used to people giving them what they're asking for in a cohesive way. Or maybe they're not used to someone saying, hey, I want this to be better for you. I'm going to fix it, but do you mind giving me something back? And then with a property like mine, since it's pretty and shiny and brand new, it's a little easier to say, hey, if you fell in love, even if this isn't the place you moved, do you mind giving me a review? With my actual residents, I want them to relay their experience. I want them to say, oh my gosh, I went to this resident party and it was fantastic, because I want their friends to want to live there. I want people who pop up in Yelp or Google to say, oh, this place sounds great. And it's really important that we drive those reviews. It's the first thing I look at every morning is my reputation dashboard every single day, very first thing, because I want to be responsive. Luckily, they're all positive at this point, but I always want to make sure, hey, did we not give you what you wanted? Let's see if we can do something to make it right.
As we're thinking about this, I love that because I think, and I want to come to your parties. So I can't wait till I have to be in Scottsdale again to come to one of your parties. Can you make sure Adrian and I and our audience members get an invite?
These are exclusive to my residents. Left, go ahead and move right in.
Okay. Well, we can do something nearby then, maybe at another golf simulator. But yeah, I love that because I think there's some CEOs I meet who read every review, just like you. They're having their coffee. They're CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company, and they're reading every review that comes through, and they've done that for years. And there's other people who just don't even pay attention. Very much like the five senses, almost, right? So I love the storytelling and the sharing and the experiences you have because it shows that you care. And caring is a free thing, but many people don't take the time, don't take the extra few seconds, the extra few minutes, the extra few hours to invest in somebody who's committing to you for a year or longer in this industry, right?
It's a good opportunity too to celebrate your team, right? So we keep kind of, I don't know if you've seen Mean Girls, they have a burn book, all these negative things. Well, we have the opposite. We have a brag book. And as these positive reviews roll in, if they mention one of my team by name, that's getting cut out and put in the brag book. And then when I have an executive from the company that comes by for a tour, or I have the property owner coming by for a tour, that brag book's going to be out on my desk. And I'd be like, hey, just FYI, look how great the team is doing. If you push everything back to the people around you, the reviews come on their own because a happy, well-adjusted team draws people in. And that falls every step of the way, not only just my leasing team, my construction team. We've had clients in town recently, and I brag about my construction team. Hey, these guys are crushing it. They really deserve some recognition. If you do that across the board with everyone you work with, when they're doing a great job and you point it out, the residents see it. Like they're not immune to what goes on in the back office. If the team is cohesive and they're happy and they're celebrating each other, the residents see that and they want to be part of that. They're like, oh, I want to celebrate with them. I want to be the reason that the leasing girl got an extra bonus, or I want to be the reason that the leasing girl got props on Facebook yesterday. So you just keep incorporating it across the board. And a lot of it's just positive outlook, right? I keep a really positive outlook at my properties with my team and with my prospects. And it flows back through in the way of reviews because people just pick up on it. Like joy is contagious.
Kat, when a time comes to look behind and say, hey, this was it for me, how would you like to be remembered? What would you like your legacy to be?
Number one, I think, is I'm going to want people to remember that I did everything I did with integrity. That's hugely important to me. And that I treated people well. More important than any accomplishment on paper or any KPI I could reach, I hope that people remember that I treated them well when I was here and that I did my best to pull them up instead of pushing them down or throwing them under a bus.
It's huge. I mean, you talked about the reputation management, and it's so important not only from your customers, but your friends and your family and how they think about you. One of the things I think is giving, you talked about like helping others, giving back, building community. What are some of the things like in Scottsdale? Adrian and I just got to be out there, 3 different events, got to see the apartment association, and the community was so strong. And people were making introductions. They were people we had never met walking up to us, welcoming into the community. So how do you give back in the community, and how do you ensure those who whether it's supporting those who maybe don't live in your apartment buildings, do you do some give back? Is there something that Greystar or the apartment association there is doing to help those less fortunate?
That's a great question. And the answer to both of those things is yes and yes. So Greystar particularly has a very strong giving mindset. We give to a large amount of places around the globe, really. In Phoenix specifically, we donate time literally monthly to things like food banks and different organizations like that. We track that time. So there's a dedicated person at Greystar that follows up and says, okay, where all are we giving back so that we can really make sure we're celebrating the people that we have on our teams because we've got a lot of really generous people. And our AMA is, I can't even brag enough on the AMA in Arizona. They are absolutely fantastic. They give back to organizations that help families and single moms and homeless people and you name it, they've got a hand in it and they're out there doing the work. And they're giving back on a really, really consistent basis, whether it's food drives, clothing drives, opportunities for service on both fronts, Greystar and our AMA here. We're really fortunate to be in a market with such a strong giving mindset. And it's not just Greystar. There's quite a few companies in Phoenix that also really give back to the community. In particular, some organizations that are very mindful about people who are not meeting their housing needs. That's something that people in Phoenix seem to be very passionate about. It's exciting to be a part of it. It is a community-wide effort. Everyone in Phoenix, even though we're competition with each other, we're still kind of all on the same team. And you'll find that from company to company. You'll get an introduction to somebody at some other company, not because it's a friendly competition thing, but hey, this is a great person over here that can really be a good connection for you. So I'm going to introduce you. And you find that a lot in the Phoenix market. But you also find people who are just inherently generous people. I always like to look at it as our job is to put people in homes. So putting people in homes is a whole community aspect. It's not just renting an apartment for that profit. It's building a space community wide where people can have somewhere to go, where they feel like they're part of something and where they're able to find the resources that they need to get connected, no matter what area that is. If they're homeless, they need to find spaces to connect. We build that in our communities. If they are just looking for financial needs, one of the random things we do here in Chandler, we partner with a local bank and they offer financial classes to our residents. So maybe people who don't know much about investing, they'll offer a class that teaches my residents about investing and creating a better future for themselves. Or maybe they just don't understand what kind of a bank account their money goes in. They'll offer a class for that. So it's building community in every space you possibly can, from the small things like a banker who's willing to share their knowledge to the big things like making sure people have a home. We're really blessed to be a part of a market that takes those things passionately.
Yet, as we're approaching the end of our conversation today, I want to thank you for making time for us, for sharing your thoughts with us, for a very engaging conversation. And I have a question for you. Whom would it be a great guest for us to have in the future on a podcast?
Wow, that's a great question. That's one that caught me off guard. I think some of the more fascinating people that I know you've already had on your podcast. So if you haven't already had Matt Rogers on your podcast, try to make that happen. If you have, I'm sorry that I missed that episode, just because he's very knowledgeable. There's some people at Greystar as well that are incredibly smart, talented, engaging people. One of the people that I would recommend, her name's Erica. I'll pass you along her information. She does a lot of engagement with our leasing teams, our reputation management, things like that. She is a fantastic human with energy that is unmatched. And she's passionate about the industry itself. So that might be a really great person to invite.
Thank you again for being with us today. Chris, any final thoughts?
No, I had a blast. Thank you so much, Kat. I love your enthusiasm. I love your passion. I love your experiences. I took some nuggets here and some notes, and I think this is going to be one of our top watched episodes. And I can see why you've got great stories of people who've touched your lives and that you're impacting. So I can't wait to see you in real life soon enough. So thanks for joining us today.
Come to Phoenix.
We will, we will. And you did great, by the way. Being your first podcast, you couldn't even tell. You were amazing.
Well, I'm a chatter, so there you go.
Everyone, thank you for being with us today, for joining us. This is another Multifamily Hangout. I want to thank our sponsors from Kairos and Coastal Painting Contractors for making this possible. We will see you next time here. Take care. Have an amazing afternoon.